Hello everybody, I'm George Williams. I'm the Next Search Catalog Coordinator at Northeast Kansas Library System in Lawrence, Kansas.
I'm Christopher Brandon with the Coeur d'Alene Public Library and the Cooperative Information Network.
Coming today from the Brady Bunch house, right?
Yep.
So today, this idea came to me. This is something I've been doing for a while, and I'm going to talk about something that I do that I use GitHub for. So it's a Koha thing, but I'm using GitHub to do it. So if any of you attended Lizette Shear's talk about using Template Toolkit for your notices and slips at the koha-US conference, one of the first things Lizette mentioned is that it's a good idea to make a backup of what you're about to alter with Template Toolkit before you alter it. And that's something that usually isn't a problem for me because I've got a process that I run once a month or so to back up all of my notices and slips because we've got a lot of them, just like everything else at Nichols. We have a ton of redundancies built into the system. But I back these things up regularly, usually about once a month, onto GitHub as text files, so that if I ever do accidentally delete something, or if one of our librarians accidentally deletes all of their notices, I've got them stored off-site. So,
nice.
So I'm going to show that today, and so I'm going to start sharing my screen here. This screen. So Christopher, you should see the koha-US website there.
I do.
And guess what? Now I'll talk about koha-US. So, we're part of the education committee at koha-US, and if you click on the Learn tab at the top of the page, all the videos we've ever done are on this Watch koha-US Original Videos button, and the last one we did was the one about using REST API for advanced credential reset, which was a follow-up to one we had done a week or two before. I guess we did resetting credentials, and then we did advanced credential reset.
Yep.
So back to back. So all of our videos are here, and if you have any questions, you can get in touch with us just by leaving a comment on any of the videos on YouTube. We check those about once a month or so, and we try to follow up when we get those comments. So, but today I'm going to jump over not to Koha immediately, but I'm going to go to GitHub, and this is my we have a GitHub site at Northeast Kansas Library System, and I'm going to make sure Christopher has the link for this, because in the README file on this GitHub repository are all the instructions for everything I'm going to do here. And I've got it written out step by step. I went through and revised these and made sure that they were good instructions before we got ready for this today. So all the instructions are there. And the first thing I'm going to do this process is I'm going to create a folder on my C drive just called Git. And I've got, let me open that up, and it opened in the wrong window, so let me pull that over here onto this screen. And it's just an empty folder called Git. And so that's the first thing I'm going to need. And then into that folder, I'm going to add a subfolder, and each subfolder I'm going to add is going to be the name of a branch code at my system. So if you've only got one or two branches, this is easy. If you're like me and I've got 50 whatever branches, it took a while to build these. And then you're also going to add one that's just called AAAAA, just 5 A's. And so let me go back to
Hey.
Yeah, it's an easy way to make it be at the top of the screen. So what I did is I created all these, and then I saved them in a place where I could grab them easily. And then this way I've just got one empty folder for each branch code. And that's because what we're going to do here is we're going to put all of the individual, like for the Atchison library, all of their notices and slips, all of their backups are going to go in the Atchison folder. And the AAAAA folder, 5As, that's going to be all the ones that aren't assigned to a specific branch code. They're the ones that are the all libraries. And the reason that I called it 5As is because that way it comes alphabetically at the top of the list. It just makes it easier for me to find. And then I've got a report here that anybody can go to this GitHub site and grab. And what it's going to do is generate a report. And which report is it? In my system, it's report 2960. And if I run this, because I'm outputting it into Koha, it's kind of doing all kinds of crazy things with the data. But what I've got is something that I can download into Excel as a comma-separated values file. And I usually find that these are easier when they've got lots of weird jQuery and template toolkit and HTML tags in them. It's just download it and save it rather than download it and open it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and I clicked on the wrong thing there. So what that report gives me is it gives me the first column is the folder, and then a slash, and then the name of the notice, default, and this one is an email notice. This one is a print notice. And it just gives you all of the information that you need to be able to identify these easily. And then the contents, the second column, is going to be all of the data that I want to put into that text file. So I've got that report set so that it's going to tell me what the name of the file is. It's going to have that on the inside of the file. It's going to give me the name of the report or the name of the notice, the subject of the notice, and the content of the actual message that's in that notice.
Nice.
So it's that's what the report's doing, is it's concatenating all of that data into one field. And so, you know, I've got the letter code, the language. That's what the default is the language. It's the default language of your Koha. And it's putting all of these into a nice thing that can be outputted into a text file, and that you can read and understand without, you know, it isn't just a glob of code.
Mm-hmm.
So now that I've got that, I'm going to, I always double check and make sure that I've got everything set up in the Git folder that I've got on the C drive, and that I know that's good. But then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this as a VBA Macro, Visual Basic for Microsoft Excel. And so I'm going to open up the Developer tab on my Excel. And I'm going to put this in the correct window so you guys can see it. I'm going to right-click on the sheet that I'm working on, and I'm going to insert this Visual Basic as a module. And then once I've pasted that in there, I can close this Visual Basic module. And then if I click on macros, it's going to have this new macro in there. And I just have to click Run. And now I can close this. And if I go back over to my folder called Git, what that macro did is it took everything that was in that spreadsheet, and it creates, it goes to this folder, and it creates a text file that has, this is the title. So the title here is accepted default email text. It adds the text, the .text, as the file extension. And if I open this up, it's got the contents of the file is the contents of that second cell in the Excel spreadsheet in the CSV file.
Nice.
So then what I do once I get all this, and like I said, the reason that we have that I feel it's important to do this is because you know, I've got, I don't know how many, I've got 80 items in this folder. I've got 21 in this folder. I've got about 20 different notices and slips configured for each library, which is a lot.
If you back up one folder, go to your root folder, and then right click on Git.
Yeah.
So you have to back up.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it'll tell me how many folders are in here, or files. Properties, right? So I've got 1,122 files and 57 folders in there.
Ooh, wow.
So that's why I back these up regularly, is because it's really easy for a library to go in there and accidentally delete something that they don't want to delete. And it creates a file for the header, because the Excel macro, the VBA, doesn't know that that first line's a header. And I've never bothered to modify the Visual Basic. So my next step, what I do is I go ahead and I copy all of these folders, and I use GitHub with Atom. So if I go over here to GitHub, my GitHub folder, these are all the repositories I have on GitHub. Next Kansas, notices and slips. And if I just paste these in here, it's going to overwrite all of the folders and the files, and I'm going to tell it to replace the files in the destination. And then I'm going to open Atom in a separate window here and get Atom to the right. Let me open up the right folder in Atom. So once I've got that, I use Atom because it's easy, and I use it a lot for a lot of different things. Let me close some of these. It's just a text editor that GitHub produces, but one of the advantages of it is that it's got the Git controls built in. So I just added all of those folders and backed up everything. I did this a couple of days ago when I was practicing for recording this video. And so any files that I've added to that repository that have changed, it's going to tell me which files have changed. Only one of them has changed. So I can stage that. Well, and actually it didn't even change that. I did it too soon ago, but you know, once the files are moved over into my GitHub repository on my local machine, then I use Git to say save all these changes to the repository. And so anything that's changed, I've got the ability now to go ahead and save those. And then I'll have, if I go to my GitHub repository, it's going to have the history. So if I want to see when was the last change to this, was 4 years ago. This one here was changed 20 days ago. And I can look at the history of all the changes that I've made to this account details notice.
Wow.
But this way I know everything that I've got a backup of. And so I use this for a bunch of different things. In addition to my notices and slips, I also regularly back up the SQL. All of my reports are backed up here. And it's an easy way I've found for sharing changes, for sharing reports with other people. And the reason that one of the nice things about doing this is, with reports, is that I always end up in this situation where I delete a report that I think nobody's used in the past 5 years, and then a week later somebody will say, where's that report? I need it.
Right.
And so this way I've got a backup of it saved on GitHub. The newest one that I created just the other day is a new process for system preferences. This one I have as a private repository because some of the system preferences have private data in them, like the overdrive information, overdrive login, Syndetics logins, any of that stuff that's part of your system preferences that you don't want other people to see. You can, that way, since these are in a private repository, only people that work for Neckles can log in and see those backups.
So now, is the process for notices the same for your sequels report and for your system preferences?
The big difference between the process for the SQL and for the notices and slips is the report that I use to get the data out of Koha.
Okay.
And the other difference with this one is that I have all the file names and with SQL instead of TXT. And with this one, I have the GitHub pages turned on, and off the top of my head, I don't remember what the page is. But I've got this set up so that there's an index of what all the Neckles reports are that's laid out as an HTML page, which makes it easier to navigate what's in there. The biggest difference I have in any of these is the new one that I just created last week for system preferences. The report, if you've got, some of the system preferences can have a lot of content in them, particularly if you're using a lot of CSS or jQuery. Excel can only handle cells that have a limit of like 32,000 some odd number of characters in them. And I have like over 90,000 characters in my jQuery system preference, which I'm sure you have a lot too.
Probably.
But since Excel can't handle when the amount of data in a cell is that much, I break those into chunks of 30,000 characters each, and I made a provision in the report so that it can break it up into up to 150,000 characters, which I've never exceeded. I don't think I've ever exceeded 120. But that way, I don't have to have a separate process for the system preferences. They're really big. What I have to do is because the macro is a little bit different there too. And the macro, the way that it works is it builds the text files based on one cell, and then it appends the data from the second cell, and then it appends the data from the third cell, and it puts line breaks in there. And I haven't figured out a way to do the append and eliminate the line breaks. So I just use this 2 pipes and then 5 A's, because I love 5 A's, and then 2 more pipes, so that I can do a search and replace and find those places where the system preferences have been split by this process, and then remove those line breaks so that I've got the system preference all as one good file in there. So
nice.
But it works pretty easily, and for like coming up with this upgrade that we're going to do as a Bywater customer, all the customers are being upgraded to 21.05 soon. This way I've got a backup of all of my system preferences that are in a production system. And then I've also got a backup of what's in our test system, because anything that I've been testing over the last couple of months, I want to be able to save those too. And so this way I've got a backup of both. And it just makes it, it's a lot easier to, run one report and back up 100% of the system preferences than to have a list of like, okay, I need to back up this one and this one and this one, because these are the ones that I've changed on the test server since we upgraded the test server. So that way instead of having to think of which ones do I need to back up, I can just back up all of them. And then I've got the history features on GitHub make it possible for me to go back and see what the changes have been between backups. So, that's the way I'm doing backups with GitHub for, the example that you've got there that we've got the link for is for specifically for this notices and slips. But I'll also make sure that we have a link in the video for the SQL backup. Because that, is pretty slick too.
Okay.
And anybody, on all of the stuff that I put on GitHub, I always put a Creative Commons license on it. So anybody is free to download it and use it and do with it what they will or change it. So, it's all there available for everybody to use.
Will you include code for the
system preferences?
preferences?
I'll find a way to, I'll get with you about that and figure out a place to put that so that it's easy for people to find the instructions. But I'm not gonna, I won't make a link to that repository because, like I said,
right,
some of our system preferences have things in it that we don't want to share.
Okay. So my takeaway with this, first of all, a couple takeaways I have is, first of all, your process requires that anybody doing this has Microsoft Excel, because they have to do that VBA process to clean up all those, to export all those files.
Yeah, I don't know. I've always used Excel a lot because honestly, every place I've ever worked uses Windows and Microsoft products. So I've never paid for Excel because every place I've ever worked has just had it loaded on the computers when I started working there. So that is one issue. If you're a hardcore open source person, I don't know what the equivalent would be like in LibreOffice or any of those. I'm sure there's a way to use Python or some other scripting language or Perl or PHP to write a script that's going to do this to a CSV file. But I don't know what that, I don't do that because I've never had to.
And I think if anybody does come up with a way to do that in open source rather than through a paid product, by all means, comment on this video.
Yeah.
Let us know, because we would love to be able to share that.
Yeah, that's a great way to get invited to be on a video.
My other takeaway on this is, I love to automate processes, but because of the VBA element in this, the step in this, it does not look like it's something that can be automated. You have to manually walk through steps for the back.
Yeah. There are some steps in here, but the way that I was backing up reports before was I was trying to make copies of the ones that I knew I might need a backup for. If I wanted to change a report, I was generally, changing reports is one of the ways that Nichols ended up with 2,500 reports in 2016, is because instead of modifying an existing report, somebody would go in and create a new report and say, okay, this will be, report, weeding report Mark II, or, weeding report Mark III. And then they wouldn't, when they got the new one running and they did what they wanted to, and they felt like it was time to abandon those others. They just didn't they didn't delete the others. But this way, you know, if you want to modify a report instead of creating a new one, you're sure that you've got a backup there to deal with. And like I said, you know, since I've started doing this, when people, it's some of the reports I write, like some of the reports that I know you write, are pretty specific for your system. Some of mine reference authorized values that are not standard authorized values. And so I don't share those generally on the Koha wiki or in Mana, because I know that if somebody tries to run them, unless they know about the, unless they create the same alternate authorized values, they're not going to work.
Right.
But this way I can say to people, I've got a report for that, and here's where you can find it on my GitHub site, and here also on my GitHub site. Now I can share that too in my is that GitHub still?
Yep.
One of the things I've got in my GitHub site for reports is my authorized values backup also goes into that folder. So these are all of the authorized values for all of the that I use at Neckles, which is, you know, we've got 1900 authorized values. So I use all kinds of authorized values. The most common ones that I use, you know, like the ones that I use for locations, I have one that I just call LOC for locations, and I've got a bunch of them that have wildcards in here, because I use these to help make it easier. You know, all our Baldwin library has some authorized values that are specific to their library for locations, and so if I put this in a drop down, it shows all of these Baldwin specific locations. So that's why I use these alternate authorized values. But then it makes it really hard to share the report on the wiki, because the wiki only has a place there for the SQL, and not for, there isn't a place on the wiki really to share, you know, how the authorized values work. So.
Right. Well, George, thank you very much for sharing your backup techniques, especially with Git. You know, I haven't spent a lot of time with Git personally, but it's a great tool and a great way to back up things and have archives of different versions of your reports and your notices. So thank you very much for sharing that.